Let me first explain what I mean by secularization in this context. Often what we understand by secularization in the mainstream, textbook is that, okay, it's going separation between politics and religion. So if that happens, it's okay, this is, or if it is a normative, political ideology that it should separate. So this is just one, meaning of secularism, actually. Secularism is a process, a social change that happens. So it's a separation of religion and politics. Sometimes it's privatization of religion, so that you never bring religion in public spaces or public sphere, in your public policy affairs in your government, whether it is government or other, so you mainly use civic reasoning and other things. The other deeper level of, say another sense of secularization, which I'm using, it's meaning that it looks like religion has kind of lost its the depth of its meaning, and to the same meaning. I said Charles Taylor talks about options sometimes when he says I'm thinking about secularization. He says, okay, 500 years ago religion was default. When you were talking about religion, it was all like science is now some kind of default. So religion was default. You would never ask people or imagine that there is another option that we can have. But like now, religion, it looks like a kind of option among many other options. So in this term, it's a kind of, you can choose to be religious, or you can choose to bring religion into your worldview or not. So it's not an overarching, ideology that pervades everything from, medicine, because medicine and religion they were the same. So education, the whole understanding of the natural world, all of them were the same. And it's not anymore. So going to Iranian context, let me give you some examples and make it more tangible instead of, too theoretical. Like 100 years ago, or even 40 years ago during the Islamic Revolution, when you were talking about alcohol, alcohol is forbidden in Islamic law, in Sharia. You were using this word, Arabic word, khamr. So khamr is basically a word for not alcohol, because alcohol is a chemical substance. It's for, alcoholic drinks or something. But it has a lot of value judgments inside it, because it's a religious term. It has a deep root in Sharia. So whenever, if you have an Islamic upbringing, Muslim upbringing, whenever you hear this word of khamr in Arabic or in Iranian context, which we use normally in religious context, then you feel okay, like you feel very bad. It's like you're doing some sin or something. So lots of different emotional meanings are attached to this. If just change of wording which happens, like now after 4 years, in official writings, in official discourses, we don't use khamr that much. So what we use is the Persian word nushidani hay alkoli. Literally translating is exactly literal translation of alcoholic beverages. Alcoholic beverages doesn't have any emotional or religious meaning or value attached to it. It's just neutral. You can talk about alcoholic beverages if you are a Buddhist, if you are in Christian context, or you are in Islamic context. So this is a kind of very, very nuanced, or very intricate change in the change of wording, which shows, okay, the background, context, and understanding has changed. So why it changes? Probably because you, as an authority in an Islamic country, you're thinking, okay, it looks like the background assumptions which were, assumed in the word of khamr is not shared by the larger population anymore. So if you want to talk about, this specific, thing or concept, it's better to use a concept, a term which has less assumptions and, is shared by a larger population. So again, when you want to, alcohol is still forbidden according to laws. But 40 years ago, when you want to justify why it's forbidden, you always say, okay, it's because Sharia, because God says it's forbidden, okay? But right now, when you want to encourage people not to use alcohol, you often use the same civic reasoning or the same reasons which you in Brazil may ask people to do. So it's about drink driving. Drink driving is dangerous. Alcohol has very bad, health problems for you. So there is nothing specifically Islamic about it. You can have the same, argument in Brazil, in Peru, in Japan, for that same reason for many other parts of the world. So what makes it Islamic, basically, so this is what I mean by, or again, going to different level. 4 years ago, when we were talking about alcohol in Iran, the authorities responsible to enforce this ban on, alcohol, there were no more these religious courts. But right now, Iranian national document, for like how to fight alcoholism, is written by this medical practitioners in the Ministry of Health. And that Ministry of Health who was responsible for that was one of those extremist Iranian, political activists. So it's not the case that this has happened on the reformists or something. It's a very, very overwhelming general change of, mindset, say, change of your background understanding, so which covers all political parties. I think this is, okay. So what I mean by secularization, just to make it clear, that's it. And let's go to political parties and elections. So in election, this is what I have actually, talked about it in my book, which was out in late May, Secularization of Islam in Contemporary Iran, which, covers all these different social, political, and also economic aspects of secularization. And moving on to elections, I and Shahram Akbarzadeh, we have started looking at political campaigns in the last 4 years to see, okay, how it has changed. And interestingly, again, it was this very, drastic, fundamental change of rhetoric from the early revolution to current, time. And this, interestingly, it wasn't the case that reformists are changing and they have become secular, and then conservatives and more religious, factions, they have stood there just in a stagnant, static situation. It covers all political parties. So when we say all of them, they have changed, their rhetoric has changed and transformed, it doesn't mean that today there is no polarization between them. They are polarized, but they have changed. It's like two parties, they are fighting each other in one big ship, So in that ship is now sailing through the seas, it's changing its position. But those two parties still are, in front of each other in different parts of that ship. So they have still this polarization, they have problems with each other, but the whole context, the whole ground, has changed. And we actually recognized 3 indicators about elections, which has changed. One was that this centrality of, jihad, martyrdom, and the other word back in the early years of the revolution, which is not the case anymore. So in the early revolution, you go to political campaigns. If you want to get, voted, if you want to absorb, voters, you have to always say, I am pro-jihad. I am the hero for martyrdom. I want to be martyr. Even literally being pro-peace was very, very negative. So to discredit people, you would say this coward, for example, candidate has been, has been doing some activism to make a peace between Iran and Iraq during the war. And it's very strange right now. So in the first election, which was in the first presidential election in 1918, which was quite free, I can say probably the most free election during the whole 3 years. And even the most liberal factions, you compare their rhetoric to today, they were really extremists. I mean, the most liberal we compare, so today's most extremist factions, they are more liberal than 40 years ago compared to the liberals. So they were talking, even the liberals, they were talking about anti-imperialism, that we will do this to the US, so it was this huge, say, anti-imperialism, pro-jihad, pro-martyrdom, rhetoric. And the second element is this element of Marxist, egalitarian, ascetic Islam. So again, this is, everybody would say, okay, we are looking for this kind of, asceticism. Economy is not the center of everything. It's not the value. More egalitarian rather than. But like right now, everybody talks about welfare economy. Everything is centered around it. And also, you can see the changes in rhetoric, how people, almost everything about elections, you probably have seen these debates in elections, everything about economy, and there is no change. So nobody talks, I'm looking for this kind of Marxism or ascetic, revolutionary, religious, say economic policies that consumerism is not good. We are not looking for these huge, consumption models or something. Everybody talks, okay, I want to improve economic situation, welfare, prosperity. These are center stage and for everybody. And the debate is that who can deliver these best, So another, the third element is the status of Imam as a very central religious figure. So in Shiism, the first 12 Imams of Shiism, they were so central in the social imaginary of Shiism that it's like Christ. If Jesus says you do something, you don't have an option to say no. You may say, okay, I don't do, but it makes you, makes your salvation at risk, or you are not anymore Christian. So if Imam says you something, you just listen. Then once you have this kind of overwhelming personality of Imam, the meaning of election, if the election becomes somehow meaningless, why should we do elections? What's the whole point? If you have such a figure, such an important figure, and he tells you do this, then why should you choose between? I mean, do you have it like if you know exactly Imam prefers this person, then what's the point of election? So once during the first early revolution, because the whole social imaginary was captured by this overwhelming personality of Khomeini, this charismatic religious figure, and even the first election, which was free, almost everybody was trying to show that I am the closest person to Khomeini. So you vote for me. I'm the closest person to the Imam. So it wasn't about the difference between views. It was more about, okay, who is the closest, and everybody. For example, Bani Sadr, who was the winner of the election, he announced his actually candidacy after his meeting with Khomeini. to give the impression that, okay, I've got the confirmation of the leader, you know. So it's the same. And during, you know, Khomeini's time in the first 10 years, the elections during that time, it's just, you know, sham elections, so superficial. You don't have these kind of, you know, differences between candidates. So, for example, you have 4 candidates, and everybody knows that the winning, you know, the winner is this guy, Khomeini, and all other 3, they say, okay, we also will vote for Khomeini. So what's the point? It's just, you know, it's exactly the same. And one important problem is that you have Imam, you have this overwhelming, you know, authority there, and it doesn't just make sense to have this kind of election. But then after Khomeini changes, first of all, Khomeini didn't have the same religious authority as Khomeini. So his credibility in terms of religion was lost, you know, considerably. And then the social imaginaries are changing. You know, people, this openness to the world, you have this developmentalist, you know, policies being implemented by Rafsanjani during the 90s, and after that by Khatami. So the whole social imaginary of people changing. And also because you have this kind of, you know, regular, you know, elections, it just intensifies this idea that, okay, it looks like we really matter, humans, you know. So before, you have this hierarchical, you know, order of Imam. So Imam is not equal to others. If Imam says something, he says something, it's fine. So you have this hierarchical, you know, orders. But it looks like after 40 years, everybody is, you know, accepting this, you know, horizontal order of, you know, people, that we are all on par with each other. We have the same value even. So Khomeini also, okay, well, I don't agree with you. Okay, I have to, even president sometimes say, okay, we have our differences, but as a president and because of the laws, I have to listen to Khomeini. And this is different from the previous one, you know. It's what happens in USA, okay? So, okay, I don't agree with you as a president. You're a president, I'm, for example, somebody else, but okay, the law says that we have to do whatever you already said. So these are very important changes, very, very crucial changes.